Hello, this is Ajay here, aka Waltzing Wizard, and today we're going to be starting a new series called Let's Learn Tetris. In this series, I want to be consolidating all the information that I know about Tetris and trying to convey that to you guys so that you can begin your illustrious Tetris careers. Today's video is going to be an overview, and it's going to be an introduction to Tetris basics and also an introduction to how multiplayer Tetris works. So without further ado, I'm going to get right into it. So here it is. As you can see, I made a PowerPoint. Thanks to Kitaru, by the way. I'm going to link his channel in the description. He helped fact check this PowerPoint to make sure that I'm conveying the information as accurately as possible. So let's get started. Alright, so this is your matrix. I'm going to be using the mouse a lot to indicate things. So the matrix is 10 squares wide and it is 20 squares tall. Right? So the goal of Tetris is obviously there are all these Tetrominoes and they fall, and then once you clear a line it sinks to the bottom, which you can see here, and then these two would be left over. And you top out or lose if the next piece that's spawning cannot enter the playfield. So if you place a piece outside of the playfield on the side, that's okay, but if the next piece spawning can't enter the playfield, that counts as the top out. So if you get KO'd, it means that the other player has sent lines in order to cause the top out to happen. We'll get into how other players can send lines later on in the PowerPoint. Obviously this is pretty basic, and this is just the rules of Tetris. I promise I'll get more in depth in the next slides. Yeah, so next. So these are the 7 Tetrominoes. We usually refer to them by the shape of the letter that they look like, right? So this would be the I piece, this is the J piece, L piece, O piece, S, T, and Z. So they'll always spawn in the center and they'll be flat. However, it'll always be a little bit biased towards the left. So only the T piece and the I piece and the O piece can actually spawn in the middle because they have an even number of Minos wide. By the way, a Mino is each one of the little 4 blocks. So a Tetramino would be 4 Minos, right? Tetra. And so that's why we call them a Tetramino. So because the Minos are an even number wide for the O piece and the I piece, they can spawn directly in the center. So that would be the third column to the fourth column to the 6th column for the I piece. Third to 6th, and then columns, 4th to 7th for the I piece, and then in the center 2 columns, the 5th and 6th for the O piece. The other columns are going to be the other pieces are going to spawn a little bit biased towards the left, so they will spawn in the 4th, 5th, and 6th columns, and they'll be in the flat position. What's important to note is that in guideline games, even though it looks like the T piece, L piece, and J piece are the only ones that have that have 4 possible rotations, it's important to note that the I piece, S piece, and Z piece also have 4 rotations. So this configuration of an I is different than this configuration of an I. This is pretty important because the way that the pieces end up rotating behaves differently depending on which of the flat rotations it's in. So it's important to keep track of which of the flat parities your piece is in at any given time. The O piece, obviously, it doesn't really matter how many times you rotate it, it'll always be like this. So the super rotational system is SRS is just the way that this diagram is showing the rotations, and it's how any guideline or official game of Tetris will rotate the pieces. You can see that if you rotate it down, it'll always lock the bottom Tetramino with the bottom of the square that it's in, but then whether it's on the left or right of that square is dependent on whether you rotated it right or left. Let's see, is there anything else that I need to mention about these? I think that'll pretty much do it. Alright, so moving on. So randomizers. There are a lot of different randomizers depending on which version of Tetris you're playing. The first randomizer that most people think of when they think of Tetris is memoryless. So this would be a truly random piece queue that shows up. So anything in this next queue, it could be any piece, and you have a 1/7 chance of getting any of the 7 Tetrominoes. This, however, doesn't actually happen in the vast, vast, vast majority of Tetris games. So I'm going to go over what the other kind of randomizers are. So for example, NES, which is one of the old school games, has an interesting randomizer that is slightly biased against getting the same piece twice, right? So first it'll roll a dice. It'll be 0 through 7, so it's an 8-sided die, right? If this dice, if this die lands on the 8th bit of this die, then that's the reroll bit. So there's the 7 pieces and the reroll bit. If it lands on the reroll, or it lands on the same piece that was just rolled in the previous piece, then it'll roll the second die. The second die is just 7-sided die, and whatever that rolls will end up being the piece, right? So that way there's a slight bias against it being the same piece twice in a row, right? So this would be known as one memory, one reroll as a randomizer. The exception being that the first dice has an extra reroll feature. A true one memory, one reroll would simply be that there would be 2 die that's 0 to 6, and if it repeats the last one, then it rerolls, right? But then NES has the random extra reroll bit at the end, which makes it a little bit different. TGM uses, depending on which version you play, will either be 4 memory, 4 rerolls, or 4 memory, 6 rerolls. And when I say 4 memory, 4 rerolls, it means that if it's any of the last 4 pieces that have spawned, which is in the first TGM is all Z pieces, then it'll reroll another dice, and if it's that piece again, it'll reroll again up to 4 times, at which point the last roll will be it, even if it's a repeat. TGM 2 and 3 have 6 rerolls before the last roll is final. So these are all a bit rarer randomizers. The one that I really want to talk about is the Bags of 7 randomizer, or just the Bags randomizer. So this is what's used on Tetris Friends, Tetris Battle on Facebook, JSTRS. Almost every official guideline Tetris client will use the Bags of 7 randomizer. So I'm going to explain this one a little bit more in depth. So what this means is that when you start the game, there is a bag that contains all 7 pieces. The first 7 pieces of the game will contain exactly 1 of each piece. You might not place them all because there's a hold function, but if you don't use the hold function, there will be exactly 1 of each piece, at which point the bag will start over, and you will have another 7 of 1 of each piece, right? A common misconception when people hear this is that after the first 6 pieces, each piece is determined. The problem with this way of thinking is that they are bags. It's not every 7 pieces, it's each discrete bag of 7. The bags don't overlap. So the 2nd through 8th piece is not a bag. The 1st through 7th piece is a bag, and then the 8th through 14th piece is a bag, etc. Right? So that is important to note. The important thing about this is it allows for setups that you can see here. This is called ST stacking, or in this case I guess it's ZT stacking because he's using a Z piece. And this is a very complicated setup that relies on the amount of each block being the same over a large amount of time as the amount of every other block. You'll see in a lot of ST stacks or ZT stacks that people will have an SL formation, right? So there'll be an S here and an L here, and that formation happens a lot. And if you're getting way more S pieces than you are L pieces, then you're going to get stuck fairly quickly. So these sorts of setups rely on the randomizer having bags of 7. Okay. So next, so multiplayer basics. So we understand sort of how the Tetris engine works now. We're going to go with how you interact with other players in Tetris. So the main difference between multiplayer and single player is there's something called garbage. So garbage are these gray blocks that you can see in all of these screenshots that fill up from the bottom of your screen and make your screen smaller. There are a lot of different ways to get rid of these blocks depending on the type of garbage there are. So the first type of garbage I'm going to talk about is no hole. So this is the only place I've seen this used is Tetris Friends 2P on tetrisfriends.com. So this version of Tetris, you see it in the middle screenshot here, and basically the lines will come up from the bottom and you have no way to clear it except sending your own lines. So the critique of this method is it becomes very similar to Tetris Ultra, because you don't really need to interact with the garbage to clear it. You just simply keep doing your own thing, and basically whoever sends more lines will end up winning. Bombs is an interesting way to do garbage that Tetris Battle on Facebook implemented. Sorry, I need to cough. So Tetris Battle on Facebook uses bombs. So in this way, there will be one bomb, or in this case there's two because whoever made the screenshot used power-ups. So there will be one or two bombs in each row. If you place a piece on top of that bomb, it'll get rid of that row. Tetris Battle is interesting because the combo chart, which I'm going to be talking about combo charts in a different slide, but it's a little unforgiving, and so the potential to combo with these bombs make it so that comboing is ridiculously powerful in Tetris Friends on Facebook. I think anyone who's played Facebook Tetris understands that this is the case. The other type of garbage, which is mostly seen, it's seen on Jstris and Tetris Arena and pretty much every guideline game, is called single hole garbage. So that's used in this first screenshot. As you can see, each line is basically a full line minus one hole. So if you fill that hole, it'll clear just like any other line. This is the preferred method of garbage for most people, since it's relatively straightforward to clear, but at the same time it forces you to interact with the garbage and therefore requires some interaction with your opponent and lends itself very well to multiplayer games. You'll see some other games sometimes where there are games that are less forgiving, where maybe instead of just one hole, it has 50% of the blocks filled and 50% are holes. Those are extremely unforgiving and therefore aren't really widely used. You're going to see this single hole garbage mostly. Hurry up garbage is used to put a time limit enforced in a lot of games. And so basically what that'll be is there'll be this light gray garbage, and then as the game starts going, there'll be dark gray solid garbage underneath, and no matter what you do, that garbage won't go away. So that garbage will keep rising and rising and rising, and eventually someone will have to get topped out or KO'd. Because it'll reach the top of the screen and it forces the issue, right? When hurry up garbage happens depends on the game. Usually it's around 2 minutes. Tetris Online Japan doesn't have hurry up garbage in most of their rooms, and so you'll see a lot of games from Tetris Online Japan where people play for upwards of 4 or 5 minutes sometimes, because without hurry up garbage, you have to outplay the other person for an extended period of time in order to actually finish the game, or someone has to misdrop. And when neither of those two things happen, the game just goes on for a really long time. So it's pretty common for most games to have some form of hurry up garbage that kicks in at some point. So you can interact with the garbage by downstacking through it and clearing it, but there's also two other ways you can interact with it. So there's garbage blocking. This doesn't exist on Tetris Friends on Facebook, but it exists in most guideline games, where once you have the red meter showing up on the side saying that your opponent sent you garbage, as long as you keep clearing lines in some way, even if it's a single, the garbage will not get added to your screen. So you can sort of delay when the garbage gets sent until you're in a more favorable part of your screen, as long as you keep sending lines. If you can't clear a line, then there's nothing you can do to block the garbage. Canceling is another way that's often used at the same time as blocking, which is when you send lines while you have your red meter queued up for incoming garbage, it'll cancel out some of that red meter and sometimes save you. So if you use this with the blocking, you could send potentially a combo, and it'll slowly make your way through the red meter, and you maybe won't even end up receiving any garbage lines. So you'll see this a lot when people are at the top of their matrix and their opponent is attacking them a lot. They're going to try to use their attacks for canceling and blocking rather than for attacking their opponent. Moving on. So different types of attacks. So singles don't send any garbage lines to your opponent. Doubles will send a line, triples will send 2 lines, and Tetrises will send 4 lines. T-spins, you can see in this first column, you can create crazy overhangs that you can twist the T's into, and it can create all sorts of interesting opportunities. If you clear one line, that's called a T-spin single, then that'll send, I believe, 1 line. If you do a T-spin double, it'll clear 4 lines in most, or it'll send 4 lines in most guideline games, and T-spin triple will send 6 lines. Sorry, I think T-spin singles actually spend 2 lines. So the advantage of a T-spin double over a Tetris is that you're clearing 2 lines for a T-spin double to send 4, whereas a Tetris clears 4 lines to send 4. So you're actually being more efficient with the amount of pieces you have to place if you do a T-spin double rather than a Tetris. So that's why you'll see a lot of players going for a lot of T-spin doubles when they're trying to attack really quickly. There's also something called a back-to-back bonus, which exists for anything that involves either a T-spin or a Tetris. If you don't clear any lines in between some of these attacks, you'll get a +1 bonus to your attack. So for example, if I do a Tetris, and then I stack a little bit more without clearing any lines, and then I do a T-spin double, then that T-spin double, instead of sending 4 lines, will actually send 5 because of the back-to-back bonus. And then a lot of games like Tetris Friends, you'll have a cool animation, and it'll say back-to-back T-spin instead of just T-spin double. Combos actually aren't uniform across every guideline game. There's usually a table that shows how many lines each combo sends. Tetris Battle on Facebook has a very unforgiving combo table if you're playing against combos, and it ramps up very quickly. Usually at around 7 or 8 combos, it starts sending 4 lines. Some games at 12 combos will ramp up to 5 lines per combo sent, and it really depends on the game. So in certain games, you'll find combos to be a lot more effective than other games. I'd say the main drawback of combo is that it takes a while to set up. And so, as you can see here, this person is doing a 4-wide combo because you can see the gap in his matrix is 4 Tetrominoes wide. If there was 3, it would be called a 3-wide, and if it was 2, it was called a 2-wide. The reason for setting it up in the middle that he's doing is that no matter how many lines his opponent sends, his piece will always be able to spawn, so it won't count as a KO. If you were to do this, if you were to have this stack on the side, it would be easier to create, and he could still have the 4-wide gap on the side, but then it's a lot easier for the opponent to KO him. The last type of attack that you'll see mainly is called a perfect clear, so that's in the last line. You can see he has 3 lines of hurry up garbage, which doesn't count towards the perfect clear, and he's about to completely get rid of any Minos on his field. All right? So by doing this, you usually send a large amount of lines to your opponent. How many lines? It depends a little bit from game to game. I know on Tetris Online Japan, it's a +6 bonus on top of whatever you sent. So in this case, it's a double, which sends 1 line plus a +6 bonus, so it'll send 7 lines. Other games have a flat perfect clear attack, which is anywhere between 8 and 10 lines usually on most games. Usually, if you do a Tetris and perfect clear at the same time, it'll send even more. Some games have an interesting quality where they have a max number of garbage holes that can be in the same column. So if we go back to garbage, you see that these 5 lines all have the same garbage hole. So some games have a max on that of like 8 or something, and so if you clear a perfect clear with a Tetris and it sends more than 8 lines, it'll actually split up that attack into multiple different rows instead of giving clean garbage. So that's interesting. And yeah, those are the main types of attacks. Obviously, each one of these different attacks I can go way more in depth on, and we're going to have a separate video on each one of these attacks, but this is just an overall overview of how they work. So the next part of multiplayer is defense. So defense is a little bit more self-explanatory, but it's harder to think about in the middle of a game, I think. So downstacking, I mean, if you see this person's screen here, he needs to downstack through this garbage, right? So he's probably gonna, hold the L piece, and then he'll put the I piece like over here-ish, and then he'll put the S piece here, and then put the T piece on top of it, and then the J piece that he held before can clog this hole, and he wants to downstack to get all the way down to the bottom of his matrix, right? So upstacking would be building your stack higher to set up for maybe a Tetris or a combo or something. Downstack is trying to make your field as low as possible. Timing your attacks is you want to make sure that you're either accepting garbage or you're canceling garbage when you want to, right? So if you're at the bottom of your screen, maybe you'll want to take garbage from your opponent and make sure that you don't time your clears at the same time as them so that they don't cancel, because then you want to use their garbage that they sent you in order to send even more attacks to them. Whereas when you're at the top of the screen, you want to make sure that you're using your garbage to cancel. So this person's screen here, he has a lot of garbage over here, and he's not going to get to any garbage lines that his opponent sends to him anytime soon. So as you can see, like, this eyepiece is getting pretty low because he's waiting to clear this Tetris until his opponent sends him lines. When the opponent sends lines, this red meter will pop up on the side of the screen that I have the screenshot for, and then he'll use this Tetris to block some of the incoming garbage because he doesn't want to give that clean garbage over to his opponent. I talked about that a lot in the Ajamba versus Jaquan analysis video of how both of them are obviously very good at timing their garbage, and you saw a lot of good examples of that in that video. The second to last topic for defense is skimming. So you can see all the different ways, or at least a lot of the different ways to skim in this screenshot over here. So this is when you have a big combo set up, but your opponent is starting to send you lines and you don't want to get KO'd, right? So then you want to use garbage blocking, which I talked about 2 slides ago, to make sure that the lines don't get sent to you yet until you can start your combo. And so as you can see, all of these skimming methods, it's called skimming because it's sort of taking lines off the top instead of what you would normally do is like clear the combo near the bottom, right? And so it's common when people are stacking combos to have sort of a staircase pattern to their combo stack, which allows for this kind of skimming, so that no matter when the opponent starts sending garbage, you have some way to block or cancel the garbage that's being sent to you, no matter which piece you have at the time. Even if you can't start the combo with it, at least you can skim. The last thing I want to talk about is specific to Facebook Tetris Battle, which is absorbing KOs. So as you can see here, obviously this is a hack, right? This guy's sending 2,000 lines. That's impossible in real life. But since this guy hasn't placed any pieces yet, when he finally places this piece, it'll only count as 1 KO, right? So no matter how many lines you sent in Tetris Battle, it'll only be 1 KO. So this is especially common when you're playing against recordings and you want to make sure that their crazy 4-wide combo is only KOing you once. You can just stop from putting pieces down until they're done with their 4-wide combo and make sure that their crazy like 50 lines or whatever they sent is only counted as 1 KO. Obviously that won't really work against real people because they'll see that you're delaying and they'll just start delaying themselves, and then all you're doing is like delaying the game and you're not actually accomplishing anything. But that can be a useful strategy sometimes. Yeah, I think I'm going to go more in depth about strategy of defense in a different video, but this is a general overview. Okay, so that was pretty much a high-level description of all the various aspects of Tetris. Hopefully that demystified some of the vocabulary that I used in my self-commentated games, as well as some other my analysis video, and like maybe when other people talk about Tetris and you're on harddrop.com and people are typing about Tetris. Hopefully this makes you understand what they're talking about a little bit more. I wanted to make sure that I consolidate the places where you can play Tetris and play against other players who are also looking to improve. So I think the Facebook Tetris Battle app is probably the most popular, and a lot of people have played that before. It's not very popular among high-level players because I mentioned a lot of problems with it throughout this video. But if you didn't catch that, then you can go back and you can play it if you want. But I think you'll find that there are a lot of flaws with it, but it's perfectly fine if you're just getting into Tetris. TetrisFriends.com is what I recommend for beginners. There's a large variety of skill levels on TetrisFriends.com, from absolute beginners to seasoned veterans. In fact, some of the best players in the world will definitely still log on to TetrisFriends.com. The problem is, as you start getting better and faster, what'll happen is the line clear delay and the lag with how you move the pieces on TetrisFriends.com will start to be annoying, and so you'll probably want to play a more lagless version of Tetris as you start getting better, just because it'll feel better to play. And so the current craze in lagless Tetris games is definitely Jstris. I have the URL here. So definitely come check that out if you're a veteran and you want to play against the best players in the world. They're all on Jstris for the last couple months or so. It's been really popular. It used to be Nulpomino and Tetris Online Japan. Those are also fairly lagless. Nulpomino especially is definitely recommended for solo practice. There's a lot of different tools available, and you can basically customize the games however you want. Like anyone who's logged on to Nullpomino knows that initial feeling when you first download it and you look at how many options are available for you on Nullpomino. You can like actually do anything. It's a little overwhelming. Honestly, some people would argue that Nullpomino gives you too much flexibility with the amount of things that you can customize on there. But really, if you want to like get specialized practice, like Nullpomino is the way to go. Tetris Online Japan has a cute single-player mode with like Japanese like accent. It's the most Japanese game you'll ever play. Basically, it's like has the cute Japanese voices whenever you do things, and has like the music in the background, and it used to be pretty popular. It was definitely my favorite game for a while before J-Stress became more popular. But yeah, it's also fun because there's no hurry-up garbage, so sometimes you get crazy games there. Alright, so that's the end of my tutorial. Hopefully this helped some of you out there. Hopefully it wasn't too slow. I will definitely be making more advanced tutorials as we go on. Next tutorials I have in the queue are how to combo, how to do freestyle T-spins, and the TKI opening is a pretty popular request. Maybe a perfect clear opening video, or ST stacking for ultra. How to play fast is probably going to be a pretty popular video. I'm not sure completely how to address that yet, but there's definitely some stuff I can say about that. So if you want to see any of these tutorials, definitely let me know in the comments. Like the video, and shoot me a message on Hard Drop, or shoot me a message on YouTube, or comment on the video, or whatever you want. Basically, I just want to know what are the most common requests that people have. Obviously, there's way more videos than this I can make, and I can make these in pretty much any order, so I'm completely open to suggestions. And let me know if you correct. I'm sure there's something I messed up in this video, so if you want to correct something, I'll certainly add an annotation. And yeah, so that's all for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And yep, subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.